Welcome to Why the Long Face? Two old friends lifting the lid on mental health over a beer with author and psychiatrist Paul Keedwell and business consultant and so-called comedian Ollie Turnbull.
Hello and welcome to Why the Long Face. You look very shocked across the table, Dr. Keedwell.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
Really?
I wasn't ready for your boisterousness.
That's incredible that at the beginning of a podcast you didn't expect
I know
the word hello.
Well, I didn't expect it in that manner.
Yeah?
In that fashion. Because
No,
you came back from work really frazzled.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Work is no good. I want to do this for a living. This is fun. Work is terrible.
It's not bad, actually, doing this.
That is what my first boss told me. I didn't like my first 6 months in work out after uni. And he said, of course you don't. Work's rubbish. Work's boring. Work's terrible.
It's great to have an inspiring boss.
He was, his horrible mank. Of course work's boring, Oliver. Turnballs.
You're not supposed to enjoy it.
No, that's why people keep pigeons. That's literally what he said.
That's why you have hobbies.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, this is our hobby, effectively.
Well, it is for now, but I think we're that good. I think one day it's going to be our profession.
Pride comes before... Anyway.
How's the beer going down, by the way? What have you got?
I've moved
that
up...
looks very crafty, that.
It is. It's a Hophead by Darkstar
What are you
Brewery.
looking at, Hophead? Oh, right.
Which is, as you would imagine, quite heavy on the hops.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But low on the maltiness.
Right.
So
okay.
it's really crisp, bitter pale ale.
Right. Good. Nice description.
Yeah, but a bit out of the bottle. It's not quite as nice as out of the pump. not for this particular. Not this particular brew.
Not as good as out the pump.
Anyway,
so what we're on about here is social media. It's a new phenomenon, relatively, but there are papers.
Well, 15 years old, right? Facebook.
Yeah, relatively new.
So relatively new
compared to civilization, and it has been said in certain reports, which we've been reading very fastidiously, that it might not help with people's mental health. Particularly areas of depression. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. What are your opening thoughts, Doctor?
Well, I thought a good place to start was this review article from 2014. So it's 5 years old, and there has been other research since then. Is the use of Facebook likely to lead to depression or even suicide?
And there was isn't there another part which says, if you're depressed already, are you likely to turn to social media as well?
Right, that's the big question, the direction of effect. Yeah.
Does it make any point that somehow an interaction or a relationship that is fostered on Facebook is somehow not as wholesome as a relationship or conversation that you have face-to-face because of the inherent distance or level of abstraction you are from each other, if you like?
This is the big question about, is social media social? Is it helpful to our social networking? Or are we replacing a deeper, more meaningful face-to-face social interaction with more superficial interaction? Or is it the case that Facebook, used in a healthy way, increases the amount of quality interaction in the real world, IRL?
Or indeed, nice one. Or indeed any interaction. So imagine you're very depressed. Maybe a face-to-face interaction is more than you can, more that you feel that you can stand in terms of the effort.
Right.
Whereas an interaction on Facebook may be something that requires less effort, potentially.
Right. And you're not sleeping anyway because you're depressed. So there's something to do. So it's a diversion for people who are already depressed. And that explains some of the relationship between depression and excessive Facebook use. Right?
Right.
I think what they conclude is there is still no clear evidence that Facebook use leads to depression, but there have been other studies since this, I think, which have tried to sort of pick apart that positive correlation between Facebook use and depression. It's not just about the amount of use, it's the type of use, isn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose that, again, we talk about this a lot, correlation and causation. So you might find a very depressed person spending a lot of time on Facebook because she can't face the outside world, potentially. But that is not saying that Facebook is causing depression. Far from it, of course.
Absolutely far from it, yeah. As you said, if you are socially withdrawn, which is a symptom of depression, right, we've established that, because you tend to experience a lot more social anxiety, you have less confidence, you have lowered self-esteem and lowered self-efficacy, that feeling that you can affect social change, right? So you perhaps find solace in more superficial, possibly more passive communications on Facebook. And I think there is a more recent research that backs that up, right?
Yeah.
From what I've read anyway.
So you talked about self-esteem there, and I think there's two.
There's a whole section on
theories.
that in this review.
There is, and I read it earlier, and there seems to be two kind of almost counter theories.
Yeah.
One is on social media, you are what my wife calls able to present the shop window of your life. You know, the stuff that you want punters or friends or people who know you friends or Facebook friends to see.
Yeah.
Versus what's really going on. And that can have a potentially positive effect on your self-esteem, because you can direct, if you like, you can curate, if you like, what parts of you, photos, opinions, things you've read, whatever, are available, if you like, to the outside world. The corollary of that being, of course, that you can also see everybody else's shop window, and that might leave you feeling inadequate or
so that therefore depends on where your attention is focused, because I think they were pointing out in the article quite sensibly that you could write your own CV, and if it's a good CV, that's quite a good boost to your ego. They were saying that there were certain pointers to how much you are reinforcing positive sense of self in terms of how many times you update your profile picture and that sort of thing. I think that was quite interesting. But yeah, the downside, and what they say is possibly going on a lot of the time, is that people's self-esteem is, in a longitudinal way, over a prospective study, is going down the more that they use social media, or if they use social media in a particular way, which is to compare themselves with other people.
Is that because if you curate your own shop window, you can only, if you like, fool yourself for so long before the overwhelming nature of everybody else's shop window, the brilliant lives they're having, the beautiful kids they have, and the nice car, and the relationship, and the places they travel, all becomes too much for your sense of self?
Yeah, this relates to the concept of active versus passive Facebook use that I came across. So if you're passively, scrolling through the updates, those little icons that pop up on your Facebook and what all your glamorous friends are doing lately, the glamorous places they're visiting, the babies they've had, and all that sort of thing. Their life's moving on. It looks to be fantastic, and all you do is scrolling through other people's lives. There does appear to be a direct relationship, or certainly a close association between that kind of behaviour and depression. Now, it's the direction of causation is still not established. So if you're depressed, you might be more likely to use Facebook in a passive way because you're more withdrawn socially.
And therefore, using it in a passive way, what leads you potentially to fall victim of, gosh, look at all these great lives that people are having?
Well, what I haven't said that doing that is going to deepen your depression. What I've said is that if you're depressed, you're more likely to use Facebook passively and less proactively. And what I mean by proactively is by using it to set up meetings IRL, right? Or tell people you've just moved. Hey guys, I'm visiting Croatia. Who's been to Croatia recently? Or is anyone in town in Zagreb, or whatever? That's an example of using it pro-socially and actively. Or you might be setting up a Facebook page or an interest group, or setting up an event in the real world that you want like-minded people to join you in visiting. So that all of that activity is associated with positive mental health and good healthy self-esteem.
So one other thing I read, because that makes perfect sense, is that sometimes the very nature of discourse on social media can help someone who is withdrawn or low energy, in that there's an immediacy with conversation. You say something, I've got to say something back of interest.
Okay.
Whereas there's a sort of asymmetric communication pattern in social media, in that you have time to consider your answer and make sure that you're happy with the answer before you release it into the world. And that can be quite a positive thing. I read for people who are.
Is that asymmetric? Why is that asymmetric? Because both parties can do that, right? Can consider their answers before giving them.
Yeah, no, I used the wrong word.
Oh,
yeah, completely the wrong word.
Right, okay. But anyway,
So what I meant to say,
but I get it. I get what you're trying to say. It's like if you're cognitively slowed due to your depression, which is a thing, right? We've recognised that. Then you've got more time to formulate your responses.
Yeah. So it's not asymmetric.
And you feel under less pressure, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a little bit like when you're having one of those conversations where you've got to say over. So, in other words, it has to be completely sequential, the conversation. I think it's non-sequential. It's probably the word I'm trying to think of.
I'm right.
Yeah. So you say something, and I've got time to think about it, and then moderate and modulate an answer that's appropriate, that I'm happy with. So
right.
It represents the real me. Whereas if I'm under pressure of a social situation, I've got to be witty, or I've got to say something clever.
So there's something about it having more veracity as well.
Absolutely. More veracity and more, I'm happy with that. Whereas, oh, Christ, I've said something stupid. Could be something that sets you up for failure in a
okay, but it would be a complicated process to try and prove that that increased veracity of conversation is going to be positive for the depressed person. But what you could say, as a minimum, is that some social interaction is better than no interaction, because if you weren't communicating on Facebook, on social media, you wouldn't be communicating at all, arguably.
I think it's two things.
Because you cut off the face-to-face.
Yeah, quite. I think that's two things, and they're both valid. One is any kind of communication for someone who's on the sofa and can't muster the energy to do anything apart from be on their phone is a good thing.
So that's a positive thing about Facebook.
Yeah, any communication is good communication. But this thing that I'm talking about is the mere fact that there is a time lag, if you like.
Yeah, you can get more out of the conversation.
You can get more out of it, yes, but you can be more satisfied with your
contribution. Right.
Exactly what
Rather than beating yourself up. Mind you, depressed people beat themselves up, whatever, if they're bad enough. I think that's really interesting. So actually what you're saying there, that was related to the self-esteem issue. So you're saying if you've got time to curate a good answer or good response within a conversation or a discussion, that's going to be good for your self-esteem.
Yeah, potentially. Because some people, I've noticed, are intelligent, well-read, and want to have a debate with a positive outcome.
Yeah.
But they don't think quickly, necessarily. And that makes them, in a social situation, seen as not good debaters, or not good people who are able to express their opinion.
Yeah.
But that's false, because that's just a particular mode of debating a point. Do it where there's a time lag, and they become far more erudite and far more able to express themselves, and that might have a positive effect on self-esteem. That's the point that I was reading about.
Yeah. Now, I think the other main issue that this article covered was online addiction, or specifically online social network addiction. But it's interesting because I'm absolutely sure that must exist amongst certain individuals, probably a significant proportion of individuals, because we know that increasingly we know more and more about particularly online gaming, where there's a community of people that you're competing against. It's almost an unlimited gauntlet that's thrown out there because of that, right? Almost unlimited number of games, almost unlimited number of challenges. Always going to be someone slightly better than you.
Or
I can just spend one more night doing this. I know I'll crack it and get the gold medal or whatever, or the trophy for the best person at playing Doom in the world or whatever.
Something more Dungeons and Dragons.
Doom's very outmoded, sorry, but you know what I'm talking about.
A goblet of power or a magical enchanted axe.
All designed, of course, to foster that addiction. All these little rewards that you get, little trinkets. And it's the same for social media. We don't know enough yet about the people that might be particularly vulnerable to this, right? But we know that there are people who are so addicted to online gaming that they are starving themselves. They're not eating.
Bloody hell.
And they're making themselves properly ill by not sleeping as well. Depression is a route into addiction, but addiction can also be a route into depression, especially if you're eroding your sleep to that degree. That's going to cause you psychological,
right?
That's going to cause you psychological harm.
And presumably, an addiction like this is where you're alternating between pornography and gaming. You must look at yourself
or social media, I guess. That might be a.
So it's part of it looking at yourself and going, God, my life is completely online now. Does that feed a depressive cycle of thinking?
Yes, I think it does. Well, what it is correlated with are things that we know are correlated with increased vulnerability to depression. And the most important of those is completely cutting off your social network.
Right.
In the
Right.
real world, IRL, in the meat world, as they call it, right? You have no proper social development or proper neurocognitive development if you're getting addicted at the age of, say, between 9 and 11 or something, before the brain is proper. You know, it's a critical period, I think, through adolescence. Older teenagers are probably better able to have insight into the fact they may be becoming addicted.
Or to be less vulnerable to having those pathways cemented in their brain when they're...
Correct. Right.
So one thing, right? So addiction to gaming, I can completely understand, because you're in an environment where you can compete literally against the best in the world if you're good enough, and you can climb up that ladder, and it must be very enticing to be able to do that. Secondarily, I can sort of not relate directly, but I can understand the addiction to internet porn. I mean, you see the thrill of seeing that for the first time, and you want to replicate the thrill and increase the level of thrill. But in terms of social media, I'm not quite sure I'm finding it easy to recognise the mechanism. Although I have felt times, say on YouTube, for example, I quite am interested in boxing slightly. So I'll see a good boxing match, and then another good boxing match will be presented to me, and I can find myself rewatching classic boxing fights for, well, not hours, but it's sort of feeds a hunger that you didn't know you had, if you like.
Well, that then overlaps, doesn't it? Because, I mean, Facebook and social media are places where people post and publish YouTube videos, that kind of thing. So you could see that you could easily be hooked on what people post.
It's very strange. I mean, I'm on another group on Facebook where people post their old photos, and now old photos of one's family is really interesting. But I'm finding
to your family. But why is it interesting to other people?
But it is. It's really weird.
Right.
You look at these old photos and you think, oh God, what was that old woman thinking? Was she worried?
I don't think I'd get hooked on that, but anyway, each their own. So maybe you could be addicted to a particular interest group, but I think it's more to do with what I've read it's more to do with the narcissistic instinct amongst us and
amongst you.
The constant need for validation that you have, for example, right?
Do you think so?
Through the social needs.
Does that make me a pleasanter person? I think it probably does, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Doesn't it? Makes me nicer. I was at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Everyone look at me. I was at Wimbledon. So I don't know. I think there might be an addiction to posting stuff, just as much as there being an addiction. It's the other side of the same coin, isn't it? You're addicted to posting stuff about how amazing your life is, or I don't know. It could be just the beauty treatment you've had that day, Oliver.
Not guilty.
What about the lipo?
I had a bit of lipo, I had a bit of tummy tuck, and everyone's agreed that it's made no difference to my level of attractiveness.
It's still very low.
I'm a 4 out of 10. I'm a solid 4. I'm happy with that.
Solid 4 is not bad, man.
Yeah, because 3 is more like this comically unattractive, whereas and then
Right.
2 is unfortunately unattractive. But I'm just simply unattractive.
Right. What is 1? Is that people who've had terrible accidents?
Yeah, it's
Right.
it's a train wreck.
Okay, fine. All in the best possible taste. Yeah, so where were we going with this? Yeah, I just think it's a narcissistic addiction to validation of your posts. How many likes have I got this week? I can imagine social influencers and people like that have it to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's a really strange new phenomenon, isn't it? The social,
Right.
Instagram stuff.
Right.
I haven't got a massive problem with it. Some people think it's. I just think it's kind of democratic.
Well, yeah, I don't have a view really. I just think it's only a problem if it causes social harm and physical and mental health.
Yeah.
Harm to your physical and mental health. Then okay, so this was not a bad article, but it didn't cover the issue of cyberbullying.
A massive problem, and I've got some relatively young children, and the idea of this it sends shivers down my spine. I mean, the big thing about cyberbullying, which is different from ordinary bullying, is that ordinary bullying is left behind at the school gate,
The
Whereas
old school bullying.
Your old school.
No, back in our day, it was over at the school gates. Well, it wasn't over. It wasn't over at the school gates. It was over when you got home, wasn't it?
If you managed to get home,
because you'd be often running the gauntlet from the school gates to home.
Well, you would have been. Of course, I would have been the bully.
Yes.
But no, and a serious point though. I mean, it really is a 24/7 thing, and I see.
Where's your pocket money, Keithwell? Give
that all
me your
you've got?
pocket money, or I'll throw you into those stingers.
Where did you go to school at Eton? It sounds like
No, but it's you.
Ian
You talk a
Ogilvy.
bit like that.
I see.
I'm being you.
All right.
You went to finishing school, didn't you, or prep school?
I went to prep school and then went to prep school,
Hilarious.
starting school actually, and then grammar school after that.
God, I prepped you to be gammon in your
Cog.
later age.
That's right. We had gammon lessons. How to say?
How to be a grumpy middle-aged man
Correct. How to go? Num, 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 num.
while going the shade of meat.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what your opinions were. You've got to hold them really strongly.
Until your face goes a nice kind of rouge.
Yeah, fueled with claret and high blood pressure.
Yeah.
But to get back to the point, it's a very serious point. I look at the amount of time my daughter spends on the mobile phone, and I just imagine the mobile phone. It's not like my mum.
A mobile phone? What, a phone that you can move around?
A mobile telephone. And you just think, what are the messages being sent to her, and what could they be? And
Right.
Imagine how awful it would be, how traumatizing it would be to feel that you couldn't get away.
There's also
From these messages.
the things that you post in innocence when you're quite young, and you don't appreciate that once they're there forever,
Yeah.
potentially. Because even if you delete your account, it doesn't delete all the messages you've sent other people or the photos that you posted necessarily.
So some platforms claim to, like Snapchat
Right.
claims to delete the message after a certain amount of time.
Okay.
Personally, I don't say anything about not trusting Snapchat, but I would never, ever dream of posting anything on Snapchat that I wouldn't want read out in court, frankly.
Right. But the
Or
same
anything.
goes for Facebook, right?
No, exactly.
But Facebook's worse because because you will have a whole network of friends, many of whom will have somewhere on their profiles evidence of whatever you've posted.
Quite. Once you put a photo out
can't-
there, it's very, very
it's there,
difficult.
it's
I
there.
mean, the right to be forgotten is an almost
It's
impossible dream now.
conceptual. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just
Delusional
I
even.
shudder at nights out that I had at university, which could have been photograph/film. Not that I did anything illegal, but just the embarrassment of it.
But you don't have to do anything illegal to lose your job, actually, anyway, do you?
Or to be
Just something
horribly embarrassed
embarrassing
and-
something that brings the company that's deemed to bring the company into disrepute.
Well,
Easy
absolutely.
for me to say, but if you were, I mean, that I think now often when you're applying for positions now, they will do a screen of your Facebook account
Not often, every single time.
every time.
Yeah, so it
Is
happened
that that's absolutely
oh, absolutely
standard
Very good.
now?
Yeah, totally. So I had a case of a friend of mine, his nephew, had posted something on Twitter offensive. They got a job with my company. My company did a scan of social media, and this was several years ago, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Found the tweet and withdrew the job application.
right. Well, I mean that's amazing, but I guess this is in danger of turning into a general chat about Facebook, the merits and otherwise of Facebook. But there is a serious point here about the cyberbullying. We went off topic a bit.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
No,
Anyway, we both digressed a little bit. No,
I think the thing about it is, what I would say about cyberbullying, if I may, is that it's like
You
a lot
may.
of things that have come to the surface as a result of the internet, which I still believe overall is a force for the good, is it's a brand new thing that we've got to learn how to cope with. And we've got to learn to deal with the effects of, and we've got to arm our kids and adults with mechanisms to minimise the effects. of it.
strategies, or
Right.
even if you can't do that, if they're too young to really, and a lot of kids that use Facebook are too young to mediate their own use of it, you have to ration it, right?
Agreed. And this comes back to your
And
point.
supervise it.
Correct. I mean, it comes back to your point about the period in young people's lives when they create these pathways of which
Yeah.
lead to addiction being particularly prevalent when they're very young, which makes it incumbent on parents and teachers to to protect.
It's the same lack of insight or development of the frontal lobe and self-awareness that means that they perhaps are not going to be great at dealing with a cyberbullying situation. Well, we know that, right? Because we've seen not in this paper, but we've seen in other papers we've read that there is a link between cyberbullying and depression and esteem problems, particularly in girls, but also in boys, but more so in girls. And there is a link, definitely even more serious, a link with suicide.
And that is obviously when it becomes terribly serious and terribly real. Shall we summarise? Should we summarise?
I think we should do that, yeah.
Yeah, so let me try, and then you tell me where I go wrong. What's been unexpected is that we talk about the negative sides of social media, addiction, reliance, and how it can feed problems with self-esteem. But there are positives as well, it would seem, from social media, in that it's a way to communicate with the outside world when you feel that a physical relationship is, or a physical interaction is beyond you. It offers you a link to resources you can use if you're suffering from something like depression. And it can be a method of communication which is particularly appropriate for someone who's thinking slowly or, again, can't face IRL in the real world, or who wants to communicate in a more considered manner, considering their responses more carefully and indeed curating what the outside world sees about them. So I think it will be a bit too much of a broad brush to say how bad social media. I think be aware of the problems that it can cause and look to use the positives that it can bring.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think people who are depressed use Facebook more. A certain type of obsessive Facebook use can lead to lower self-esteem and depression. So both are probably true. The last bit's really important. So the take-home message is, if you're going to use social media, use it in a pro-social, proactive way, and don't use it in a passive way, and try not to get dragged into the more narcissistic, look at me, I need my validation from this thing kind of way. That's a
beautiful summary. I really, really like that summary. And it pains me to say it. Ironic announcement. Our Facebook page is YTLF. Go to it. And if you want to communicate with us, you can communicate with us through there, or Twitter, YTLF, etc.
Through that evil social media.
Which can be a force for good as well as a force for evil.
Indeed. See you soon. Hey, thanks for joining us on Why the Long Face. As ever, we're here to inform, hopefully, and entertain, but we're not here to give you medical advice. There is, however, information on our website, ytlf.com, that's WHYTLF.com, about where to get help. See you next time.